Hello, ladies and gentlemen of United Rogue Overwatch. It's time. We're back. Welcome back to Overcast, the United Rogue Overwatch podcast. We are, of course, hitting you guys up with a recap of Season 5, Week 1. I am your host. I go by many names. I have Ajax. Some call me Soup Can. Some call me the most carried Overwatch player of all time. You can call me whatever you want, but you can also call my partner Andrew. Andrew, how are we doing tonight?
I'm doing pretty good. It's been a long time since we had the podcast. I know people have been wanting it. Uh, I just got busy. I'm not gonna lie,
Amen
but
to that.
we're
It
here. We're
was
ready.
We have had a long journey trying to set up the season, set up the podcast, set up every little bit, but we've gotten it started. We've had some great matches. We saw some, 3-2s, we saw some 3-0s, and we're going to have to dive into each of them. But the first one that we want to dive into, of course, we're going to start in Emerald. And of course, we're going to start it off with a tradition near and dear to our hearts, and that's Washington Rebellion and some sort of forfeit. Unfortunately, for the Ottawa Washington game, couldn't really find a schedule. Some things came up. So unfortunately, Washington did have to forfeit the match to Ottawa, which is a bummer. Everybody really wants to see the Ottawa team kind of come out, especially because there are some new faces, right? Laggy is no longer on the team. They still have a good core of Chris and Kamani. Bearbutt, of course, is still rocking out. But then, there's no Smooth, there's no Biscuit. So there had to be some new pickups. We're interested to see how Guna and Cake kind of fit into this. And they also have a secret pocket pick of Soup. Always excited to see how that's going to go. But then, of course, on the side of the Washington Rebellion, there is Icy, the lone soldier who will die on that hill of Washington. And also just some more familiar faces. We have Apache coming back. Zuwap makes his return after, I believe, a season break. I
Yeah,
believe Zuwap went over to San Diego last season. Um, but then, of course, you got some other familiar faces of Cobb Ross, and then maybe some newer faces. We have some Sam Slays, hopefully the DPS coming out from them. Both these teams will have to see what their season looks like next week, but we are going to move on to a game that did happen, but again, due to unfortunate circumstances, we didn't quite see it unless you were part of the sick watch party that ended up in the general Discord chat. That, of course, is going to be the Pittsburgh Phantoms versus the Montreal Stags.
hmm
I, of course, am Pitt, proud and true. It was close. It was a close game, close 3-2. Honestly, Montreal getting their second win in United Rogue Overwatch history. Great. Last season they got one. This season they're already starting off 1-0. Insane for Montreal, right? I don't think anybody sitting here would have expected that, just on how the franchise has been. But let's go, Montreal. Way to turn
yeah.
it around.
A
And way to
great
clutch
setup.
out such a great game. Oh, 100% great setup. I mean, when you look at the way this game played, if you're in that watch party, both teams went back and forth, right? Lijiang started it off. It was very close. Montreal edged it out. And from then on, each team that picked their map really showed why that was their choice. Pittsburgh had a very close win on Midtown. Um, there was a lot of swabbing around, a lot of great picks. Shout out to Moto on the Soldier, absolute beast. But then, you turn it right back around. Esperanza, again, close, but definitely in the favor of Montreal. Once it got to 2-2 after Saravasa, it all came down to 66, where Montreal firmly stood their ground. And again, Moto, the absolute beast, was taking off heads left and right. This is absolutely an insane roster that they've put together. I am excited to see how they kind of continue to go on. Um, especially after the way that Montreal has been throughout UR, right?
Yeah.
Uh, Coming out with a win off the gate is massive. But on the other side of things, Pittsburgh, known to, have a little bit of week one troubles. I think I could be wrong. Someone might have to fact check me on this. Uh, every season since the beginning, that means all 5 seasons, Pittsburgh has lost their week one match. Uh, so we have to kind of wait and see, is this the typical Pittsburgh style, or is this a, idea of what's to come? Are we seeing this early downfall of the Titans that have been Pitt in the past? Unsure. We will have to find out soon enough. But while those teams had a great match, it was close, it was competitive, both sides battled and really showed what they had. We had a game very similar to that was streamed, Andrew.
We did
What game was
indeed.
that, my man?
That was Dallas Vanguard versus Jersey Jackals. That one did get streamed. We do have at least one Emerald game streamed. Sorry. We're
We'll
trying.
get it. Listen, week one bumps. Everybody's gonna have their week one bumps in the road, and ours apparently was scheduling some streams. But Andrew was 100% right. We had Dallas versus Jersey, and this was a match that a lot of people wanted to tune into because this is essentially, if you look at the rosters, right? This is the rebirth of Dallas from last season and the rebirth of New Orleans from last season, who I'm sure everybody remembers the insane turnaround that those teams had. In the end, especially when New Orleans almost made it to finals. Now they're coming back with almost the exact same roster. The only new pickup is, of course, Dragon Master, who I believe played quite a lot of support in this game. But when you look at what happened on these maps, close all around, right? The first two
Hmm.
go in the side of Dallas. The second map being 66 that you can see here was competitive, was close. Due to some unfortunate circumstances, there had to be a forfeit awarded to Dallas. So that puts them up 2-0. Never put these players on Jersey in a corner because what happened next was insanity. And I really got to shout out the DPS duo. Alpha and Koi went nuts. If you saw this match, you truly saw what value those two could get on a team. I mean, Koi on New Junk City had at least four clutch Death Blossoms that really took home that map specifically. And when you take a look at some of the other maps that were played, the rest of the team really put it together. I mean, Runasapi, the very last map, was back and forth, but Jersey just kept edging it out. Each fight that they won, they got a couple more centimeters, right? Nothing big. But when that stacks up over and over, and every time Dallas wins, they just go back to the initial spawn point of the bot, you're not making ground. And overall, I mean, huge shout out to the likes of Zach and Parasite specifically. Zach, I thought, had a great game on tank, and Parasite really. I had a lot of those 1v1s on the DPS just outright won. A lot of times stopping Koi before he could do his Reaper things. But unfortunately, it was not enough as Jersey ended up just fully coming in. And this is exactly what they did last season on New Orleans. They made it scrappy, they made it chaotic, and they took these weird ones and small fights and small skirmishes, won those, came back as a big group to take out the point, take out the map, and take out the series. Overall, both teams looking super strong. Andrew, out of these two teams, who are you most excited to see going into next week?
I'm very curious for how Jersey Jackals will be, or not Jackals, Jackals. I don't know to say these names yet. I'm new team. But yeah,
Still learning.
I'm very curious to see how they'll do. They had a very close match against Dallas. Like it was so close. Like going to game 5, even with like the game 2 forfeit that happened. it happens. But yeah, going to Game 5 in this series and like just going back and forth, at least initially, and then like it was an insane reverse sweep that they were able to pull off. I think against Dallas for the win. And Dallas still looked pretty strong too during the series. So it wasn't like it was a they were kind of like caught sleeping. It still looked like pretty competitive, I think, throughout it. But just the DPS just like clicked. They just came alive during those last 3 games just to get out that series win. So I'm very curious to see how they'll do. Very very excited to see the return of the Koyoi Reaper, get, doing some names in Emerald as it has been.
Gonna have some nightmares about this.
Yeah.
100%. But yeah, I agree. I mean, seeing now what New Orleans could have been all season, because they, last season had some unfortunate scheduling issues, couldn't really fill out that roster spot until the very end of the season where we really saw them pop off. This is the same roster, right? So, with the addition of Dragon Master, they're taking that same core and now giving us a full season's worth of what they can do. And honestly, I think right now, they have a good argument for contention of playoffs, but that of course comes far down the line as we have so many more weeks to talk about and more matches to talk about because surprise, we've got all of Ruby to talk about. And the first Ruby game that we're going to talk about again had a great watch party. Again, if there's ever some stream issues, jump in a general chat if you want to watch the match. I'm sure somebody somewhere is going to stream it. We'll have a big watch party. The first match we're going to talk about is Baltimore versus Houston.
Philly,
No,
Philly.
Baltimore versus Philly. I'm trying to look at my thing. Baltimore versus Philly, which I think going into this season, when you started seeing some of these transactions, when people saw Choco, Adbon, and Arunas all on the same team, specifically Choco and Adbon, I think everybody in Ruby started actually crapping their pants.
We had a heart
I
attack.
mean, right. Like, how do you take two of the best players we've seen on the DPS role and just put them on the same team? It scares everybody. Nobody is safe at that point. And now you add in, Biscuit gets jumped up to Ruby. We have some new faces in the locals. I believe it's locals Kalas and locals Kalad. I'm apologize if I say those names wrong, but having them in there with the leadership of Adbon and Choco, and then also just having the raw, fun tank of Arunos, it's a wild team. But then they have to go against the silver medal demons themselves in Philly. And Andrew, I'm sure you would love to recount your times and stresses playing that match. What do you think was the biggest stressor in that win against Baltimore?
The hacks from just whatever the character that hacks. I cannot think of the name right now. What the heck?
Sombra?
Sombra. Jeez. Yeah, Chocoman, and Adbon. I think were both swapping to hack me. They would both kill Sombra like throughout the whole series, and that was like so hard to do with. They kept just like kept keeping from getting to just jump back in and like even defense matrix to block all the like fire we were taking. But like the thing we kept doing throughout the match, we would just like all 5 just rush in and just go onto the back line or on the squishies and just like try to shred them. That's all we did like the whole match. It worked out thankfully for us, but it probably won't work as easily again because they'll be definitely ready for it. But well, we had a good time. It was a very tough matchup against like Chocoman and Adbon again on the DPS, just like shredding us. And the supports also were very strong too. It wasn't like even that the only real threats were Chocoman and Adbon because like the supports were still doing their work, but we still tried like our best to like kind of separate them apart, you know.
Right. And
But
honestly, speaking of some of the supports, you guys picked up Dyer and Shogun, who Dyer, I believe, is coming in rookie season. Shogun last season was chilling on Chicago. One of definitely the stars of that team, and really making it shown here, joining you, Foliage, and Fresh nobody better forget about Fresh.
Hmm.
The
We also got
absolute
Laggy.
goat hanging out. Well, I was getting to that because Laggy got promoted up from Emerald. And so Laggy gets the promotion. The Genji God down from Emerald is now chilling with the Ruby players. And what I really want to kind of see more of is that cohesion between Laggy and Foliage, because there were some times where the Genji Venture combo was brutal. I think neither backline had a fun time this series, right? Both
Yeah.
teams, their supports were just left to the gutter. But when, push came to shove, it ended up being Philly that had some of those fights where they won it uh just based off of their supports outliving just the DPS just long enough to then commit more to the fight and be able to push back in, giving, the rest of the team the support they needed. But overall, great series. Very excited for how Baltimore will bounce back. As I said in the beginning, you have Choco and Adbon. The, room to grow on that team is insane.
Oh
Uh,
yeah.
as as someone who's been, constructively yelled at by Adbon in the past, I can say it's definitely worth it, and it's going to be a good ride for those two, or a couple others on that roster. But that is enough for some non-streamed commentary. One of those. Oh, there's a hard word I'm thinking of. We're gonna go to Chicago versus Halifax
Yeah, the
because
match was
that
actually
was
on
streamed.
stream.
Right. um, and our if we don't count forfeits, it's our first 3-0 of Ruby. Um, and first 3-0 of the season. And it does say 3-0. That is what the scoreline says. It was much, much closer than what people think. And the real kind of spot that I want to talk about in this match was the second map, which was Halifax's choice. And they chose Circuit. Um, oh my dear lord. The absolute just slugfest that happened between the snipers was insane. I mean, it I couldn't even describe. You would sit, wait a little bit, and all of a sudden, boom, three people are dead. Just insane from both Mickey and of course Blue Jay. If you were watching this, you would 100% see, I can't even describe. It was awesome, really fun to watch. Another thing we got to see is not Torb from JD, a very rare sight to see at this
Yeah,
point.
what the dude's
Um,
on support? I thought they were a Torb main. What?
I
You
don't
tell
really
me they're
know. I
you
think
tell
he's
me
just
they're a
trying
support
something out.
player? What?
No, I refuse to believe that, to be
Yeah.
honest. I just think that JD really wanted to try something new, flex a little bit, and just see like, oh, maybe I'll try support. Hung out on Lucio for half the time, boring character. Um, but overall, like I said, great series. Circuit for me was a big highlight. This match specifically really got me curious because Halifax was at kind of their peak. They had some really good players in a lot of the DPS battles with Strider and Minky were insane. I mean, Strider came out swinging. Mans was the reserve to Houston last season and said, you know what? I deserve a spot up front. Here's why. Clicking heads left and right. Huge shout out to Strider. But what I want to say is that Chicago did 3-0. They were also down a certain member. A certain Vanguard was missing from the roster. They had creeped in. I'm gonna assume creeped.
That creep
Um,
did.
Creeped in. All right, my apologies. They had creeped it in. But Vanguard last season, I don't know if I don't know if some people saw. He was kind of feeding. So if they put Vanguard in, Chicago needs to rein him in. He's just gonna feed his brains out. and throw and int and ruin it. And with my sarcasm aside, it's going to be a scarier look for Chicago when they can have Vanguard in. I think Crete did a great job, but putting that full strength roster in, you know, having that starting lineup, it's scary. I don't know how it's going to look because Vanguard is typically a tank player, and I believe Ghostface also is a tank player. So I don't really know, how that roster is going to look. But overall, it's going to be a slugfest when they can come back in. And I'm very excited to see not only how they look at full strength, but how Halifax looks going into the rest of the season because they did put up quite a good performance. Again, couldn't, end up taking a map, but the roster that they fielded looked strong. They had great moments, great plays, and I'm very excited to see how they progress. And now we have one more game to talk about for Ruby. And that is, of course, New York, the return of New York after a couple seasons, and Houston. And this match, I really enjoyed watching. There was a lot of tank fights going on. The Rhine mirror at certain points was very entertaining to watch. Um, but again, another example of a team not necessarily at their full strength. Houston had Cool in, not quite sure where Pineapple was, but Cool, Hanzo, Main, and we can see that impact in there. Lots of great shots throughout. Kings Row specifically was really a map that stood out to me. But Houston ended up not being at full strength. Um, and I believe neither was New York. New York had their kind of roster hanging around with their reserve as well, who either way, when you looked at this match, it was great. I think there were certain pain points of Houston that they once they realized after Lee Jong and went to circuit, they figured it out quick. They figured out their style quick and full held New York. New York couldn't really get anything going. The Sigma play was amazing from Johan. We saw some great DPS performance again by Cool and of course Frosty, aka Smooth, who again got brought up. Um, so these players have a lot of potential and a lot of promise to show, and I'm excited to see where that comes in because again, some of these matches were a lot closer. I mean, they full held New York on circuit. If you're a team going against New York, maybe you want to look at that map if you need a pocket pick to really try to like dive that stake in um, for maybe a killing blow or just a bounce back. But for Houston, even on the maps that they lost, like Kings Row, they still showed really good signs. It wasn't, a full on sweep by any means. It ended up being a just matter of unfortunate ult usage, especially when you hit Houston's attack on third point. Just some untimely ults, some great blocks from the other side. Shout out to Elp blocking. I want to say 3 shatters. I could be wrong.
Yeah, at least two. It was insane how many they blocked.
Right. It was just a that not only that, but then having the May walls was huge on this map. The amount of times that Johan was just caught out because of a pin and then walled off and then you're dead. And there was no Lucio on the side of Houston, which we know they can play. I know for a fact Ricochet has a good Lucio. So they just didn't want to flex it over. Didn't really need to. First week of the season. Don't really need to show all your cards yet. But overall, I think this series was a great indicator of kind of where those teams were at. And it's interesting to see them both not necessarily at their full strength. So I am curious to see where they end up going once they have that full roster in.
Yeah.
But looking at those two kind of teams and their performances, Andrew, when you were watching, who would you say was the biggest player that kind of stood out to you on either side?
Uh, it's kind of hard to tell. I think like everyone was kind of working really strongly together. But like I can't ignore just the support backline, the backbone of like the whole league being Trash Can. She keeps everyone alive, like no matter what situation it feels like. If you need a strong support, Trash Can is like the pillar for keeping people up and like being able to help support them when they need it. So that's who I would be looking at for like one of the biggest players for Houston for sure. But I do think like for both teams, their whole teams were like really working together for what they were trying to go for. This stare down here against Johan and what was it, Elp? This was like the moment I remember the cast were like talking about who's gonna go for the Shatter first, once they get them, because it was like the mind games for Shatter were absurd on this map. It was hilarious to watch down who like what's gonna happen when they both had ult.
Oh my god, and they're just jiggling at each other. The
Yeah, they're
cart's
like who's
bending the
gonna
corner, going to third.
like who's gonna
Oh,
cap?
definitely a good time. Definitely, I agree with you 100%. Trash Can, every team that she's been a part of, every season she's been a part of, you know, top numbers in healing, keeping assists up there as well. Typically has one of the higher assists per 10. Um, but also, just not dying at all. Um, she's very good at keeping herself alive, but then also keeping the rest of the team alive. And that is something you got to watch out for because if you're just trying to run down somebody and all of a sudden Trash Can just says, no, actually, I want them to live, you got to be scared because now you're essentially fighting this 2-on-1. Because she's deadly if she's on the Kiriko, especially hitting a lot of the headshots and using Suzu at very prestige times. So very excited to see those teams go again. But we are going to talk more about those teams in a little bit because we're going to go back to Emerald as we have some week 2 games coming up. I believe some are scheduled. I don't know any time, so you're going to have to stay tuned. But when we look at the week 2 schedule, we're going to see Jersey versus Pittsburgh. We're going to see Ottawa versus Dallas, and we're going to see Washington versus Montreal. And with these games, I am very excited for all three. If you look at Jersey versus Pitt, Jersey off a great win, Pitt off a close loss. Both teams really trying to take that next step forward. Jersey wants to get that another win, start securing their spot at the top. Pitt needs to dig themselves out of, the small hole they've put themselves in. So both of those teams clawing at each other to come back. Then, of course, you have Ottawa versus Dallas. We have not seen Ottawa. We really want to see Ottawa. I really just want to see a rematch of the grand finals from last season
Yeah.
because that's what that one will be. And so having these two teams play off, especially after Dallas had that loss, they're going to come back with a fire. And I don't know if Ottawa is ready for it. So we want to see how that goes. But then at the bottom, if the gods above allow it, there is Washington and Montreal. And I don't know. I don't know if people are aware, but that was the first Montreal win last season. And it was a 3-0. So surely Washington wants that salty run back a season later. And Montreal want to keep their streak going. Andrew, when you look at these 3 games in Emerald, which one has you most on the edge of your seat?
I can't lie. The War versus Montreal is kind of the most enticing. Ottawa versus Dallas, we know how that's gonna go. With like just a slugfest between the two. It should be a pretty similar case to last season's grand finals, even like during the regular season. So I'm very excited for that one. But like the War in Montreal one, that's the one I have like the most like unknown factors about. I haven't gotten to see War again so far, but like Montreal had their first win like out of the season, which is like it's already a higher percentage than they usually get at the start of this. So I'm very curious if they can keep it up or if it gets back to down. But only time will tell. We'll have to see.
Very true. And honestly, I couldn't agree more. I am so excited to see Montreal War. Personally, I think I might go Ottawa versus Dallas just again for that rematch of the grand finals, but also for Dallas to run and get a win They had a very tough loss. They want that kind of win. Like I said, I believe they're going to come at it with a fire under their asses. I want to see also the new look of Ottawa. They've had the core of their roster the same, but they're switching it up. They had some new players. So I'm interested to see how these new pieces fit into this puzzle. So overall, very excited for these three games, but we have three other games that we need to talk about, and that's going all the way down to Ruby, which of course we're going to see Baltimore versus Houston, Chicago versus Philly, and Halifax versus New York. Baltimore, Houston, I think is a sleeper pick, to be honest. I think that game could be wild. Um,
Hmm.
this game is essentially going to be how well Baltimore has adapted to, trying to keep up their aggression that they had and we saw worked out really well in the Philly match, but then balancing that out with trying to help peel a little bit more, or just give a little bit more of guidance to, not have the backline dove as much. So I'm interested to see how that goes. Versus Houston, I would love to see Pineapple come in. New player, I don't think I've seen them hanging out. I would love to see that full roster come in and kind of get rid of some of these question marks of how they look at their full strength.
Hmm.
Then, of course, we got to take a look at Chicago versus Philly, both of which coming off a win. So one team looking to go to an O. With the Chicago Philly game, I really want a tank fight. Ghostface had a great tank performance, so I would love to see that. I would love a tank fight between you and Vanguard.
Oh
So
no,
bad.
not again.
I listen, I want to see it. I want the return. It's gonna be
But they
great.
can they can play the Zarya character. Well, I don't want to deal with that.
I mean, yeah, but like somebody's gonna pull out the Zarya against you at some point. Like you already
I
hate
mean,
Doom,
true.
and
I
that was the
already know it's
first
gonna.
team you had to fight was the Doom team. So like
Oh yeah.
surely that doesn't impede your progress too much, we hope. Uh but yeah,
We'll have to
very
see.
excited. hmm We
Oh,
will have to see. Uh are you in the slightest bit worried about the Vanguard return?
I am a bit because I know how they play previous season. They're very strong, so I'm not taking it lightly if they return for the next season or not next season for this week when we play.
Right. Well, hopefully that match still ends up being a banger. Just like hopefully we'll have a banger of a match out of Halifax and New York. This one is going to be a good one for sure. I want to see more Minky Widow. I had such a good time with Minky Widow. I thought Strider was amazing. Uh, you know, like I said, getting that bump up from reserve now to main roster. I would love to see how that goes into when you're having to fight Veritas and Kieran and really having to see how those DPS battles are won. I think the tank of Storm versus Elp will also be interesting. I think we should see the Storm Doom. It worked out pretty well when it was brought out. There were a
Hmm.
couple sore spots there, here and there, but honestly, I would love to see that Doom come back out. And then, of course, we would have to wonder, does Zeus come in? And if Zeus comes in, that missing player from last week, where do they fit in? Their highest role is also tank. Do we see a change up anyway? Do we see a support change up? Nobody really knows. We're going to have to see kind of what happens in that next week. But Andrew, out of these games, these three wonderful games we have coming up, which one are you most excited for?
I mean, I can't like shy away from my own match. I think mine's pretty interesting. I'm very curious to see to play against Chicago for this week because I think that's a very strong team. I think we're also pretty strong, so I'm very curious how it will actually turn out like at the end of the day.
I really just want you guys to. I don't care if you win or lose. Now that Pitt is out of Ruby, definitely a Philly fan myself. It's been great
Woohoo.
playing against you guys. I also just love Philly sports in general. But I don't care if you guys win or lose. I just want you to make sure that you kill JD over and over and over again. Um, that would be my one wish. So if anybody's listening, just make sure that JD does not have fun in this game. Um, that is my one wish. Thank you. But I gotta agree. I think the Chicago Philly match is definitely the game out of here that I'm most excited for. Um, I mean, you just have two rosters that on paper are scary, just very intimidating rosters going head to head. Um, and I'm very curious to see more of Chicago coming out because, again, we don't know if Vanguard comes in, what the tank swap will be. Will they change them in and out? We'll have to wait and see. But at the end of the day, we can talk about what matches we want to see. I don't think I could give score lines. I don't really know if I'm smart enough for it, if I'm intelligent enough for it.
Yeah, I kind
Especially
of
if we
got a
talk
bad
about
brain.
right, like it's kind of hard. So,
Yeah,
if we think about it, I think we know someone or something that is smart enough.
yeah, something kind of spherical, or maybe made rules around itself, possibly.
Um,
Let me
is
see.
it time, Andrew?
I think it's time.
Are we
It's
going to the
time
wheel?
for the wheel. Oh, the wheel. We love the wheel. Oh, I love the wheel. You all love the wheel too, right? Tell me you don't love. Don't tell me you don't love the wheel. That
How
kind
do
of
you
hurt
not
me.
love the wheel?
What?
Anybody who
What?
how do you not love the wheel? Like, right? Like, I don't understand anybody who cannot love the wheel.
It's so pitiable. I don't know the word. You know what I mean?
Pivotal?
It's so
There it is.
important. Pivotal. Yes, yes. I can say
There it
words.
is.
See, this is why we
Listen,
need the
we don't do
wheel.
English. The
This is
wheel needs
what
to tell us how to speak.
we're so bad at our own language. We're not intelligent enough. This is why we need the wheel to decide what wins next week between one match from Emerald and one match from Ruby. Because we only wanted to pick one because it's kind of hard to make them all. But here's a Dallas versus Ottawa match for week 2 that we are too dumb to figure out who truly is the superior team. So the wheel has chosen for us.
Now, we do have a disclaimer. If your team is not selected by the wheel, I'm sorry, the wheel hates you. Tough luck. Not our problem, not our decision. The wheel is above all. Carry on, Andrew.
Yes. So the wheel chose the teams, and we're just going to see right now how the Emerald match for week 2 will go between Dallas and Ottawa. And here it is, the spin.
Everybody
And the
holds their breath.
undisputable winner is Ottawa, once again taking the win. Just like last season, that they were just a nudge above, just a little bit ahead of the Dallas team for this time. It's undisputed. It's all facts right here. That's it. We don't need to have them play. We just put it in the sheets here. Let me
Don't
just
worry,
type this in.
just gonna edit that,
Hold on,
in,
hold on.
send that. Honestly,
There we
this
go.
game definitely will be an absolute great one to watch. Um,
Oh
I
yeah.
would not be surprised to see either team win, to be honest. But it appears that Ottawa will take the cake. Get it? Because
Hmm.
cake is a player on Ottawa. Haha.
Yes.
Bad pun aside, let's go to Ruby
Just
Wheel.
like the
Home.
pun we made like a week ago, and only one person laughed in the voice chat. Y'all know who was there.
Shout out to the real ones.
Oh yes, but that's not the only wheel we have. We have another one.
Nobody was ready for the double wheel.
We have 2 wheels. Oh, you didn't think we would only do 1 wheel. We have the Chicago versus Philly game, which I'm very impartial to. The wheel chose this, not me. So it wasn't me who chose this. But the undisputable winner of Chicago versus Philly will be chosen by the wheel. And now it spins.
So excited to either have you mauled or JD mauled, whoever
Oh
loses.
wait.
Ooh.
Hey, we win.
Ooh,
Hey, I don't
that's
gotta worry about it.
unfortunate.
Hey, JD, you weren't on tour. That's why you lost. That's the reason. Sorry.
Ooh.
Should have been on
JD
tour,
not
man.
on tour is the reason why Chicago loses. That's crazy.
Yeah, it's just all factual. You know, the wheel knows all. That's why. Yeah, yeah. It's the wheel.
Oh,
Sorry. Sorry, not
God.
sorry.
Andrew's definitely not sorry, but I'm sorry that I won't be able to see this match until it happens because we are very excited to see this. You obviously because you're playing it. I because I want to see these two teams go at it. I know a fair amount of players on both sides, so I am very excited to see how these two teams clash. But of course, that does bring us to the end of the Overcast. Players and GMs and captains, please bug each other to schedule your matches. Make sure everybody is getting them in. Andrew, any final words for the week other than just telling JD he should have played Torb in order to win the match?
Maybe you should have done the just a little hammer there also on top of that. But I think the next week will be pretty interesting, which is this week because we kind of started late. Don't sorry. This
Sorry,
week
not
should be
sorry,
pretty.
100%.
This week should be pretty interesting. We have a lot of good matches. I'm pretty excited to see a lot of the Emerald matches, especially the Ottawa versus Dallas and War versus Montreal. I'm very excited for those two.
100%.
But yeah, that's it for
We
me.
I mean, we 100% are excited for these matches, and we also want to thank you guys for tuning in. There were a lot of um, attacks on me personally when the podcast was starting. I appreciate it. Knock it off. I angry. No words. Appreciate the love. Do it
You
again, and I'm
you
gonna
can feel the
find
fury.
you. Roar XD. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Have yourself some good games, and we will see you next week for another episode of Overcast.
Peace out, everyone.